In this video, we're going to go over how to synchronize your Google Calendar into your AI-enabled chatbot. Welcome back, everybody. If you've been following on with the series, this is where we go from not having a bot at all to building an entire, basically AI-enabled chatbot for contracting businesses. Anybody who needs appointments, who deals with a lot with the reviews, Google reviews especially, and anybody who has the same sort of questions over and over again. In the last episode, we went over a very basic version of this where people can book appointments, but by far the biggest flaw in that is that there can be duplicate appointments, meaning that it doesn't check whether or not there's already somebody there. Now, this is by far going to be the most technical of these videos, but I've tried to simplify it as much as possible. And if you just follow along, you should have no issues. If you do encounter something, there's something maybe that isn't working as well for you, please feel free to just leave it in the comments. I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. Now, what we're going to do in order to actually build this is, in the previous videos we were using Zapier, and while that worked fine, I would suggest, at least for this specific video, to use Make, which is a very strong Zapier competitor. I've actually made a video about it, which could be coming out either right before this or right after this. And even beyond this sort of use case, the pricing of Make, as well as the intuitiveness of it, makes it a more attractive option over Zapier. So we've actually switched a lot of our work to Make. It does the exact same thing where you can connect multiple different apps together. However, we've noticed that it is better, it's faster, you can do more operations for less. And if I go in the pricing section, you'll see here it's like for 10,000. Well, Zapier only has 750 for like 30 bucks a month. This you can have 10,000 for 10 bucks a month. Now, in this, it will be required unless you already have a Google API key, which I don't think most of you do. We certainly didn't. Make is a way around that. Now, jumping into Voiceflow, I'll go over an overview of what we're going to do, and then I'll go step by step and break it down as to how you can go ahead and do it yourself as well. I'll make myself a bit smaller for this. So this is what, at the end, this should look something like this. The first part is obviously to get the customer, and this, by the way, if you haven't watched, I suggest watching previous videos, but for just to catch up to speed a little bit, this bot can take information as far as name, number, email, address of anybody who signs up for it. And then we then send that information over to Airtable or Google Sheets. Now, the new part of this is, while before people could book appointments by saying, hey, look, I want you guys to come on this date, and then that would be it, and it would just show up on the Google Sheet as well as in the email. We can improve this by actually directly inputting it into your Google Calendar while checking whether or not there's already an appointment there. Here's how that's going to look like. First thing you want to go do is format whatever input the user gave, because if somebody says, hey, when would you like us to come visit you? You could say, well, I want you guys to come tomorrow. I want you next week. I want you on the 5th of this day at this hour. There's so many different formats, and we really want to dumb it down and simplify it to give ourselves the best chances of success. So that's what the first part of this is for. It's really just setting the date format to a very specific format, which is ISO 8601. After that, we're going to send a webhook to Google Calendar, and just to check whether or not that specific date has already had an appointment to it. And then we're going to update Airtable to say, well, look, we're going to update with the lead information, and then it's going to say, has this date already been booked in? It's either going to say busy, available. As soon as that's done, we're then going to send another webhook to check the exact same Airtable, and if it says that it's busy, it's going to return saying, hey, unfortunately, we can't book you in at that time. Could you please specify another time? And if it is, it'll just say your appointment has been booked, and then we'll go ahead and add an API here saying, or we'll go ahead and add a call here that says your appointment has been confirmed, and that'll be the end of that. I hope that makes sense so far. If it doesn't, while I walk through it, it should help clear things up a little bit. So let's start from the first input, because this is realistically the only input the customer is going to have to give. After they've given their information, their name, their email, whatever, it asks, when would you like us to visit you? Now, like I said earlier, the most important thing here is to capture the date, but not only this, to set it to an ISO date format. And this is just a date format that most computers can understand. What I've done is I've come in here, and you can actually do a AI set, which is basically using AI to understand what it is that we're looking for, and then transforming whatever the user gave into what we want. So for this example, I just said, hey, look, transfer this input, which is the appointment date, which we said here, look, capture the user reply to appointment date. I want you to transform that into the ISO 8601 date format. The year is 2023. That should clear up any confusion or any sort of mistakes as far as, well, it was only trained until 2021. After that, what we're going to want to do is add 3 hours. Now, the reason why we did this is because, well, appointments it's not just a 1 minute thing. You want to give yourself at least a little bit of buffer, especially if you're driving out and especially if you're driving out, you're going to want to give yourself that buffer. Now, for us, this could be 3 hours, could be 4, could be 5. It's really depending on your specific use cases. We found 3 hours to be just fine, and you can go ahead and tweak it as you go along. And then after that, what we've done is we've created a new set card, which basically just says, hey, look, because this is not AI, and this is not either. No, sorry. This is AI. It's just saying, hey, add 3 hours to this date. You'll notice here, this is just a test thing. In the actual production version, you would remove this. But as far as debugging goes, I think it's really important because this is usually where the things first break. Or this is at least where it's broke for us. So this will just basically display what it is or what the appointment date is, as well as when it's going to end in the same format. And then after that, as soon as that's done, the first thing we want to do is create a webhook that's going to check the Google Calendar and update an Airtable. So let's go through it one by one. The webhook, as I explained in the previous video, is pretty standard Make webhook. Let's go ahead and create that. If you don't have an account on Make yet, there is going to be an affiliate link down below. It does help us out. Feel free to use it. But regardless, the first thing you want to do is create a new scenario, which is very similar to Zapier's Zaps if you've used that beforehand. And once you're on an empty scenario, go ahead and create a new module, and then you can search up different modules. For us, it's going to be a webhook, and you can go ahead and select custom webhook, which triggers whenever you receive data. Now, create a new webhook. It's simpler to avoid any confusion. And for this one, I'm going to call it YouTube Airtable check. Copy that address to your clipboard, and then I'm going to hop back into Voiceflow. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to put what we just copied into the API call, and let's send that request over. Now, keep in mind, we're sending 3 pieces of information over. The first one is going to be the appointment date, which we set earlier. The second one is going to be the appointment date end, as well as the last one, just to sort of more clearly identify who is trying to book an appointment. I've also included the email. Go ahead and send a request. I'll put in some dummy information. ISO can be quite long, so I've already got like a pre-made version, which looks like this. And the email, I'll just put in our email. Send a request over. If we did everything correctly, we should see code number 200, which is perfect. Now you'll see it says successfully determined. That's good. Now, right after, the next thing we want to do is actually check whether or not this specific event already exists in your Google Calendar. So go ahead and search up Google Calendar, and then press on search events. Things can get a bit tricky right here, but bear with us. The first thing you want to do is actually select your calendar ID so that it is yours or whoever you're building this for. For us, let's just use hours for now. The start date is going to be the start appointment date. The end date is going to be appointment date, and that's the reason why we actually used the AI sort of step in order to make sure that this is always consistent. Because while Make, you can try to input like, well, tomorrow at this day, we don't want to risk it, especially with something as important as meetings or appointments. The reason why you have to be very careful with this is because your customer on one end, they might have something in their mind about, well, they're going to come next week. However, if something messes up on the formatting of the data in Make or anywhere along the lines, they're not going to care. They're going to say, well, look, I booked an appointment with you guys, and either you came way too early or you're way too late. So just save yourself the hassle and just use that AI step. It'll use a bit of tokens, but realistically, in the entire build, this is pretty much the only real use of tokens. And the last thing I want to put right here, it's the query. Now, if you don't put this, it's just going to return any and every appointment between the appointment date and appointment date end. So realistically, you could actually leave it like this. Unless you have different types or you've got a shared calendar with multiple people, the query serves to filter all that out. What you want to do is use the word that is common between all of the appointments. So if you have all your consultations are named consultations with John from John Digital, And then right below that, you got consultation with Eve from Eve Digital. The word consultation is the one that you want to make sure that you're getting back. For this specific case, I'll just leave it empty. And then you can go ahead and try this out. It's going to start waiting for data. Then, oh yeah, that's what we want. Send the request this way. Let's give it our time that we gave it earlier. And then it went through. I should have. There we go. So the webhook went through, and the Google Calendar also went through. Perfect. And you can see it found one thing at that specific time, which is great. After you've set up your Google Calendar, there's basically two options that you've seen. If you remember in the actual answer, there's a thing called the total number of bundles, which is basically the total number of answers that it's found. If this hadn't found a single answer, this would have been 0 and there would be nothing here. That makes it very, very simple for us to figure out, okay, well, is there somebody there or not? Because this is only searching between this and that date. So the two main options are either it finds a bundle, or it finds 1, or it finds a 0. It might find 2 or 3, but the only option is either it's 0 or more than 0. Well, how that helps us is that we can now separate what happens based on whether it's 0 or more than 0. And to do that, we're going to use a little device called a router. I'm going to go ahead and pull this here. I'm going to add a router in between them. Now a router helps to divide or to filter, like a divide on the road, to filter between two pieces of information or two options. In one of the filters is going to be, well, let's assume that you get more than one bundle. So the condition is going to be that the amount of bundles is 0. And we're going to call it no events. In the other case, we're going to put it that there is an event, which is going to be called event found. And we're going to put the condition as total number of bundles is going to be not just equal to 1, because let's say you have more than one event, we might as well cover all our bases. Greater than 0. So now after we've got these two options, depending on which one of it goes, it's going to be pretty much the same thing. We're just going to add a different thing, change the word at the end. So this one's going to be, well, since there's no events, there's no meetings, you're available. This one is already a meeting, you're busy. The next part of it is actually integrate Airtable. And what you're going to want to do is search for records. And remember how we used the email previously? This is to help with that. Select the base that you're working on. And for us, that base was the main base, and the table was a scheduling example. And now the formula here is you're going to want to tell it, I want to only search up the email that corresponds with the one previously. And to do that, it's pretty simple. I'll go ahead and copy and paste it in here. We're basically just saying, hey, look, if you find in the column email, which is this, if you find the email which we took from the one that was provided in the webhook, we want it to be the same one. Go ahead and this one. It's important that it's that one, the same one that came from the webhook. And then after that, that's pretty much all you need to do right here for at least searching the records. Now it's going to return a list of records. Once you have that list of records, the last thing you want to do is, if you're not busy or if there's no events, it's update a record by its ID. And now there should only be one realistically. Go ahead and fill in the table information, use the ID number, which was this, and since there was no events, you're going to put yourself as available. And that's it. Now that Every time that somebody sends a webhook, it's going to check your Google Calendar. Then if there is no events, it's going to search up the records with that specific email, update that specific column in, update that specific cell in that column, in that row, which will be this one. Now let's do the exact same thing, but just the opposite for if there is an event found. Go ahead, go into Airtable, go to search records once again. And now all you've got to do is go down back again to formula. I'm just going to go ahead and copy this. Create a new record, update a record by its record ID. And then once again, take its record ID. Now all we're going to do is change availability to busy, because as you know, well, this is the one that if there is more than 0 events found. Press OK, and now let's test this out. So we're going to hop into Voiceflow, and let's test this out. Send a request. We're going to put the appointment date as the ISO format that we were talking about earlier. The email is going to be team, our email basically. Send that request over. Now if everything worked well, custom webhook, let's say, did it find one? It did. Okay, good. So now, technically, this should have updated the one that said available earlier to busy. Look at that. You can even wind the back. I remember it was available here. And that is part 1, or the first 50% of how we're going to do the scheduling thing. After that, one of the last step actually is to actually use the API of Airtable. So to get started, you're going to want to go into the development section of Voiceflow, take the API card, just like last time. However, this time, instead of doing a post request where you're sending information over, we're now getting information directly from Airtable. And this is the reason why we switched from Zapier to Make, is because it's more difficult to do this through Google, because they've got some sort of like developer. You've got to sign up for their developer program. It's not worth the hassle. Just use Airtable. It's the exact same thing. Go to get, and now to get your API URL, which is very similar to the Make URL, you're going to go into your Airtable, and you're going to want to click on this little help button right here. That's all the way at the bottom right. You're going to see API documentation. And then on the left, you'll see under your main base, the name of the table. Press on the one that you're looking for, and press on the slide that's written retrieve a record. And this right here is your URL. You want to go ahead and copy that in here. And I've already got mine set up. But as mentioned before, the headers, you want to put authorization, the API key. This is very, very similar to what we were using earlier. But you've obviously got your API, your secret API key. Now to go ahead and make a new one, what you're going to want to do is click on You're going to want to click back on the help section, go to API documentation, and then that's going to take you to the authentication tab right here. You're going to have to create a new one. It's actually very, very simple. You're going to create a new one. It's going to give you an API key that you're going to have to use. I won't show you because, I mean, it's got our API keys, but once you've got that, you can then go ahead and paste it right here. Just replace all these X's. Then below that, the parameters is going to be filtered by formula. It's going to be email. The capture response, you can just go ahead and take this word for word, but to explain it shortly, and Voiceflow actually have a very good video on how to actually do this. I'll try to link it in the description as well. It talks about APIs and Airtable. But the response is just everything that comes back. The records is sort of the subsection of that, and the 0 is just referring because arrays in, I think it's Python, but arrays start from 0, then go 1, 2, 3, 4. So the array number 0, or the object, or the, what is the word I'm looking for? The first item in the array is called number 0. And then within fields, which is as you see in Airtable, these are the fields. We're looking for the one that's called availability. And then we're just telling it, hey, look, whatever is in that field, I want you to put that to the variable called availability. You can create a new one here. And then that's basically going to put availability is going to be either set to busy or available. Once you've done all of that, the next thing that's going to happen is just a super simple if condition that says, hey, look, and I'll even go and make it right here. It says if, you're going to want to do if available. This is just the label for it. The condition is going to be if the variable, which is called available, or availability, is available, if it's available, then it's going to take one path. Add another condition. If busy. It's busy. And then as it says here, you can just either point it to a text card that says your appointment has been requested, or if it is busy, all you're going to tell is, hey, well, look, unfortunately, we're booked at that time. Please enter another time that works. And then it just goes all the way back to capturing the last date. It's going to say they're going to put in whatever they would like, and the whole system repeats once again. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you can simply enough, incorporate double checking and making sure that you don't overbook your calendar using Voiceflow, Airtable, and Make. I hope you found some value in it. I know this was more of a technical one, but I appreciate you sticking in there. If you have any questions, anything I can maybe set some light on, please feel free to drop them down below. I'll try my best. The next video is going to be a lot more about Make. We've been using Make a lot recently, and I think it's super powerful as a platform. So I'll be sure to create more videos on that in the future. In the meanwhile, I hope you all have a fantastic day. If there's anything, like I said, that I can help with, or if you are looking to build this yourself for either your business or for another company, hit us up. I think all the links will be down in the description. On that note, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.